All right, we're rolling. Welcome to episode 2 of the official Other League podcast. I'm your
Three
host.
names.
I'm your host, Eric, also known as Pain Train, here with G Money, also known as Greenville Packer. Gio, how's it going, man? Successful week 4 for you.
Yeah, thank God. Thank God. Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to have you back. Our second official other league, newly named other league pod. 20-minute tops. It just didn't really work out for us last week. So
Didn't last. We had to go
nah, the
longer.
last. But yeah, week 4 was good for me. Not as great for you, but we'll get into that in a little bit here. But yeah,
Yep.
good week of football. We saw a few teams in the league kind of explode with points this week. I mean, I think the winning point total was 155, or highest point total, I should say, for the previous 3 weeks, and that got obliterated this week.
Mm,
Yeah, Arby's went off. I mean, 175. That's a hell of a number. And then I think there was a couple managers that were
yeah.
right around that 145 mark. So yeah, it was
Yep.
a lot of points, a couple duds, but we'll get to that too. But yeah,
Yeah.
good week of football.
Yeah. I often feel like the first 3 weeks of any fantasy season are kind of just sort of feeling it out first 2 3 weeks. When you get to week 4, that's kind of moving time.
Oh yeah.
You're coming up on week 5. First third of the season is almost over. Playoffs start week 15. So you can kind of learn a lot about where things are, where things are trending. So yeah, big week, important week. I think you can kind of start to see different teams kind of sort of the teams
Trends.
that are kind of going to be contenders kind of
Hmm. I
starting
agree.
to separate themselves and consistently starting to put up points. But again, I think any week can change anything, and next week one team who looks real good this week can you know have a totally different outlook, depending on how many points they put up. So yeah, like you said, uh we're going to roll right into the matchups, but we can start with your team because you did get your first win of the season. um
We're on the board.
you was that
I said we're on the board. We're on the
Yeah,
board.
on the board. Yeah, you did. The Bandits, I think, put up a season low in points, I believe.
Could have been. I didn't look back
Um,
that far, but yeah,
yeah,
68,
season low,
68 was
season
tough.
low in points. You in week 1 put up 74. That was the second lowest.
Oof.
But yeah, Aaron,
Yeah.
surprisingly, Aaron put up the lowest number of points this week. He was number 3 for me in power rankings, I believe. I think
Two.
he was 2 for you.
Two
So
for I think
yeah.
both of us,
Oh,
possibly.
really? Did we both have 2? Yeah. So pretty
Yep. We
surprising.
did.
We did. I did have Aaron as well at 2. So yeah, pretty surprising putting up 68. But yeah, why don't you take us through your first win of the year?
I was really hoping that we were going to get to this point before week 4, but yeah, I mean, just overall, I mean, starting off on Thursday night, obviously the team didn't perform well. At least the team I root for, the Packers, but did get a pretty solid production out of one of them. I'll say Romeo Dobbs looked like he was definitely the guy that was linking up with Jordan Love, which I kind of alluded to during the draft. And I was telling Dre that when he was sitting next to me when I picked him, I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be Jordan Love's kind of safety blanket a little bit. I mean, Watson's the guy to kind of look out for here in the coming weeks. Now that he's healthy and as the kind of big play guy. But yeah, Romeo started me off pretty well. Obviously, Jones unfortunately got kind of phased out a little bit of the run game just because they were down so quick and so many points there. But yeah, and then moving into, I mean, not really anything crazy special. Obviously, the Cole Kmet 27 spot was huge for Green Bull. Yeah, that was a surprise. Was he was kind of steady, but never really a touchdown guy. And then Chicago, obviously put up some points finally. And then yeah, Jacobs. I think you and I shared a text kind of early in that
Yep.
game where it was kind of a get right. We could kind of see what the writing on the wall was for game script wise with no Jimmy G there. I mean, he was getting a ton of looks in the passing game, especially in check downs. They were running the rock with him. I mean, he kind of looked like he was bouncing back. Now we'll see. We'll see what happens. Kind of moving forward if he gets his feet underneath him. And I don't think he'll perform to the level that he did last year because last year was just insane. But if he can get somewhere in that top 10, top 15, hopefully top 10 spot for me, that would be huge, especially with Cooper Cup coming back. Yeah, poor.
Mm-hmm.
I really do feel for Aaron because again, the hype train I guess metaphorically speaking of you and me, jumped on him
Hmm.
last week, and his guys just didn't unfortunately show up for him. I mean, Olave having just one catch is just unheard of, really. I don't think anyone would have thought that. And then just kind of really nothing special from anyone on his roster.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the
Yeah.
rest of it. I mean, to put up
Yep.
68, there's not much to note. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Furthermore, I mean, yeah. What do you make of it? I mean, again, 102 to 68 isn't a
Yeah.
crazy win
Yeah.
or loss there.
Yeah, I think I mean obviously huge win for you, also huge going just kind of touching on Romeo Dobbs. I mean, he's got 25 targets in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I think with Christian Watson coming back, that may go down a little bit, but I think there's a pretty solid case to be made that Dobbs is could potentially be in terms of target share, could potentially still be the sort of wide receiver one in Green Bay. Kind of Jordan Love's sort of favorite target. I still think Watson's going to get his, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dobbs out targets Watson from here on out.
Yeah,
Aaron
just a
Jones,
little
yeah,
quick little
go
side
ahead.
note. Sorry to pop in there on Dobbs, but
Nope.
was looking into this like right before we came on, and just to see essentially where my holes were, and obviously Romeo Dobbs is my number one receiver statistically to
Hmm.
date. He's actually wide receiver 15 right now. I was
On the
just
year.
scrolling on the year, scrolling through
Damn.
here. Yeah, he's put up 18, 18, 18, and then he had one, kind of dud game week 3 with 5. But yeah, to go back to your point, I mean, yeah, he's kind of been the steady guy in Green Bay for him. But yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Sorry, I just want to add that note.
Yeah, no, you're good. It interesting, real quick aside. It's funny how you have guys on Thursday night and you have two and collectively you put up 20.9. Would it be different if Dobbs had 10 and Aaron Jones had 10.9? Like would you feel better or worse?
I mean, I feel I would say I feel equal. I would feel equal. I mean, getting 20
Yeah,
out of them, I mean, I'll take it. Obviously, it wasn't
sure.
exactly the game script I wanted. I mean, I didn't necessarily know what the snap count was going to be like for Jones, and then obviously game script wise, I mean, they were down in a hurry a lot. I mean, the Lions jumped on them in the first half. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny how obviously that game scripts play a huge factor into fantasy,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I'll take 20 to start out. I mean, I wasn't too upset with it, and to your point,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we'll see kind of where it shakes out with that Packers offense
Hmm.
moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also really good for you to get a win, especially with the Bengals continuing to
Oh
be
God, I don't want to highlight
probably
that.
one of the most surprising, I think, storylines in the NFL early in the year is how bad the Bengals look. And it could be coupled with Burrow's injury. I think there was a quote that Jamar Chase said sort of around the beginning of the year where he said, Joe should sit for the first couple weeks and just get that calf right before they get into the season. Obviously, that didn't happen. Now they're kind of behind the 8 ball where, they're 1-3 and I think and their bye week is in week 7. So you got 2 more
Yep,
games to kind of get right. But I mean, if they're looking at, maybe they get a win in Arizona, I think, Seattle coming to town is
tough test.
gonna be, yeah, it's a tougher test. Seattle's a pretty uh maybe like a top 10 team in the NFL. But
Yeah, I mean, to chime in on that, I mean that
yep,
you're spot on. I mean, Joe Burrow certainly hasn't looked the part. I mean, I think he had another sub 5 point game for me.
yep. He doesn't look
His second
healthy,
of
man.
no
Can't
second
move
of
in the
the
pocket.
second. Well, actually, I should say third game of the season under 10. Second game in this out of 4 weeks that he was under 5. So I mean, it's pretty unheard of for a guy
Yeah.
that obviously is the highest paid player. Everyone made a note of that, obviously, with the contract situation that he got over the summer. And then, yeah, to your point, I mean, where do you draw the line with competitiveness from Joe Burrow wanting to play, obviously, to keep him in the hunt? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I think they're 1-3, right? Is that their,
Yep.
yeah, the Bengals are 1-3. So they're kind
Yep.
of really just kind of staying, hopefully, to try to stay in it, right? To stay in the
Yeah.
hunt. But, I think that, and then, the coach obviously trying to press to keep himself off the hot seat a little bit, maybe, with the season
Yeah.
kind of dwindling early on for that team. So, and then T Higgins, kind of following suit, obviously. Now he's got a little rib injury that kept him
Yeah.
out of that second half. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll see.
likely to miss some time.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that certainly hasn't helped. Now, bright side, obviously, moving forward, we could possibly see Cooper Cup potentially come back this week. If not, he's at least practicing. So,
Yeah.
and we've seen that Rams offense look pretty solid. I mean, overall,
Frisky.
they're
Yeah.
certainly a pretty competitive team, and they're putting up some, putting up some stats. They got guys all across the leaderboard, really, in that
Yeah.
offense. So,
Yep.
yeah, more to come, I guess, when we break down week 5 and some potential, players and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
Bengals haven't helped the Green Bowl Packers by any means. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of touching on your other guys just quickly before I move to Aaron's.
Sure.
I think New Orleans also pretty disappointing. They're showing in Tampa that rolls over to Chris Olave. I was stunned that Derek Carr played. I thought he would sit his I think his yards per attempt was somewhere around 3. It was like pathetic. I mean, Alvin Kamara, we'll touch on it when we get to me, but he had 13 targets and 13 catches for 33 yards. That's an NFL record.
Like, not a bad guy to have a full point PPR.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'll take those all day, but it's just the overall state. I think it's pretty. I know we were texting about it with Jacobs. He was in a really good bounce back spot. I know we had discussed maybe potentially some trades. I know Jacobs was a trade target for me. Trying to get him, but I think riding it out, he's locked in to at least be in like a top 10 running back kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, going back to that trade conversation that, we shared a little bit around it.
Yep.
Full disclosure again, since
we can let the league know what the terms were. I think that's helpful and instructive. Deal. Yeah. So we basically discussed the two main pillars of that were Jacobs was what I was looking for, and Garrett Wilson was my main offer. At the end, we in the end of it, we couldn't really come to something, and I think we both kind of thought it might be a little premature, especially from your end. Totally get that with Jacobs and the matchup that he had. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's always helpful to see where people value different backs, and I valued Jacobs as a top 10 running back rest of way. So
full disclosure, like I said, going back, besides the conversation you and I had, receiver obviously was the spot that was the glaring hole kind of leading up to these first 4 weeks without Kupp being there. So and really playing wide receiver roulette with waiver wire moves, guys getting hurt. Again, we noticed last week of how many duds I've had in terms of zeros in that wide receiver 2 spot. So yeah, there was a number of discussions, at least coming out of the camp from Green Bowl, that we were looking for a receiver. And to your point, the running back depth is there. I have 4 pretty good running backs. Aaron Jones is back. Pacheco looked very, very, very good in that game.
Yeah, he did.
James Cook has been easily my best back, and then Jacobs finally coming around. So now we'll see. Obviously, this week's last week's price is not this week's, as everyone says in fantasy. You're a little bit less desperate when you get a win. So. Then obviously with the Kupp news, we'll see. But yeah, to your point, it's interesting. It was an interesting week of trade talks. To your point, you do get to see where teams kind of value their holes too. And some people are glaring. You can kind of see what they need. But it's funny. It's a fun part of fantasy for sure.
Yeah. And to close this matchup, and then we'll move on to the other matchups of the week. But going over to Aaron's side, I think I honestly wouldn't be alarmed necessarily if I was Aaron. I ultimately would just chalk it up as this is just everyone in my lineup hit and had a rough week and a rough spot. You get those weeks where opposite end where Ben. Everyone on his team, his first 3 players get him, I think, 100 points. And
first 4, it was nuts.
Yep. So, that happens. It's just how it goes. And even his bench, like, you can't look at it and be like, oh, I should have played this guy over that. Nothing. Yeah. So, yeah, would just chalk that up as just a rough week. Guys had rough matchups, Tua in Buffalo, Olave, that whole game script. Yeah.
But the players have been listening to the pod and heard that they were ranked number 2. A little pressure on their back. We don't know. We're not going to know.
It could be. I'm 100% confident that Jamar Chase is tuning into our podcast tonight.
So we know Aaron is. so he probably got a little nervous. But
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
where do we
So
want to go from
then,
here?
yeah, no, we can just roll right down. Next matchup I have, I think we'll do mine last. Let's do
Yeah,
my recap last, and
that's
then we
cool.
can kind of roll into the new segment that we're introducing. So,
Love
I
that.
have next up, I have the Bastards and Andre.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, go ahead.
So
You kick
good,
this one off.
yeah, good win for Andre. He keeps continuing to stack wins. He's got in his last. I'm trying to see his matchups. This is terrible, terrible podcasting. I don't have it up. But he's 3-1 on the year. Third in the league. I think good win for him. Jalen carrying him, winning with Tyreek only getting 10.2.
Mhm.
Kyron Williams continues to be just a monster from a volume standpoint. 2 more rushing touchdowns. I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first quarter.
Mhm.
A-Chain is, I mean, A-Chain's he's got to be a top 10 back the rest of the way, right?
I
Even
mean, yeah. I mean, if you want,
even if he doesn't get all the volume that guys in the top 10 would get, I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, he's a monster.
so the talk, I guess, obviously, I mean, should say coming into the season was that he was a speedster, so he
Yep.
was going to add a different element, obviously, to that roster. Jeff Wilson going down, does that play a little bit of a factor of him getting kind of the early run here a little bit as the
Yep.
number two to Mostert? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but he's definitely taken the opportunity pretty well. He's actually 3 right now on. Obviously, last week he had 47, so it changes that average out a little bit. But he's the number
Yep.
3 running back right now. Mostert's 2, but even in that game, I mean, game script might have been a little different because of the score, but I think he certainly looked like the better back against Buffalo this weekend. I mean, much more pop. Obviously, had a couple big runs that Mostert really didn't really show in that
Yeah.
game, at least. I think Mostert only had like 11 carries or something like that when I looked at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Andy definitely certainly hit on that guy for sure in the draft, and Williams. I mean,
Stud.
Williams, was more of a handcuff. I think he got Williams in 14. I
Mm-hmm.
know that, and I think he got uh,
He took A-Chain around 10
10.
because
Thank you. Yep, and it was a
because
middle round pick.
I
Yep.
know the way the draft went, all 3 Dolphins backs went back to back.
Okay, that's a good
So
point.
yeah, so
Yep,
Andy took A-Chain,
good
um,
knowledge.
Steve took Mostert, and then I took
Hmm.
Jeff Wilson because I had Aaron's
Yeah,
pick in the 10th.
yeah.
So
I looked at that
yep,
Williams pick, and again, it was more of a handcuff situation, probably, and not really necessarily knowing what the workload was going to be. I mean, I thought Cam Akers was certainly going to be the guy prior to the season, but Williams is certainly looked the part. I think he's running back 4, so he's got 2 guys at 3 and 4 that
yeah,
are in double digit round picks. And Williams, I always date myself to, you always know your previous teams and kind of the structure of them and what got you to the finals or what got you to the wins. And I kind of take this Williams pick from Andre, like sort of like the year that I had Arizona's running back, um, David
David
Johnson.
Johnson, yeah,
Was just a flyer pick in the 15th. Knew that he was going to be a rookie. Now Williams obviously is second year player, but just one of those guys where you kind of keep him as a flyer pick, and it popped. And now,
yep,
he certainly looks that he's going to be a consistent cog in that. And then going back to Andy's team just quickly here before we get back to you for the recaps. I mean, we're
mm-hmm.
talking, a guy that has Jordan Taylor in his IR.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead for the breakdown if you want to go back to it. We were kind of tangent on
Yeah, no,
other
I think
Andy's
it's
team there
good.
a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's all good. So yeah, going back to his team, I know he starting Robert Woods and Roshan Johnson just as kind of fill-ins, and then Waller's been a disappointment all year, pretty much for the most part, as the entire Giants offense has been. Just having Jalen Hurts with the ceiling that he has, I think is just that's such a steady presence in your lineup. I mean, I had him last year; he carried me to a title. So, yeah, good win for Andy. He's been putting up, consistent points. So, and he's got guys on his team, regardless of how he got them, that can win him weeks. I mean, Tyreek, Hurts,
Yep.
Kyron now, and A-Chain. So, close matchup with Logue. I mean, I think they both kind of, had pretty average weeks from a point standpoint, but Logue, I mean, Amari Cooper with, he put up his lowest in his starting lineup, but Watson, being the late scratch, I don't know how you can sit Cooper. I mean, DTR, their backup looked real good in preseason. He looked awful against Baltimore. I think I saw that he wasn't even expecting to play until like 11 o'clock that day.
Yeah, that was similar to, we going back to that car situation that you mentioned earlier. I mean, that was one where it was kind of the reverse, right? I mean, I thought Watson was going to play going into the weekend. I mean, he looked like he was kind of just questionable, but kind of going in with that tag prior to Sunday, and obviously that certainly affects against a good team like that in the division. Amari Cooper 2.6, not ideal from his wide receiver one, but yeah, to your going back to kind of tag along, I guess, a little bit on his team. I mean, Brian Robinson, as we mentioned in that trade with you, I do think that was a pretty good, really solid pickup from him, from his standpoint, obviously with losing Chubb, and now hopefully he gets Barkley back this week. I know he's got obviously Herbert on bye, and that's a huge point total for that, for him, considering Herbert's a big cog of his points. I mean, he has 35 last week, 25 this week, a little subdued, but and then Evan Ingram's been really, really, really steady for Logue. I mean, I know that
hard
was
to find tight ends. Yeah,
huge. Yeah, it's massive. So, I think the Bastards. I think we both actually picked the Bastards last week.
Did we?
Yeah, so we're both. That was one of our misses. Not a great week in the pick'ems. We'll get to that later.
Okay. Yeah. No, just gonna say, I think Logue's team just kind of putting up close to 100. It's either going to be across the board where guys just don't really put up that much, and you're kind of hovering around 12 to 15 for most of them. 3 out of his 4, including his defense, out of his starting roster get 12 to 15. If you don't really have spike weeks, you're probably going to get close to 95, 100, maybe 105. And it's kind of a crapshoot. It just kind of depends on whatever your opponent does then at that point. So, so next matchup was Nils and Rick.
Yep.
How did we do on this? Did we both pick Rick?
We both picked Rick. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we both picked Rick here. So I think that was I only had 2 wins, so I guess the precursor here. I mean, I was 2 and 6. 2 and 6.
Let's say who we picked when we do the recap.
Sorry, 2 and 4. 2 and 4. Okay. I like that.
I think that might be a little easier. So you were 2 and 4. Was I 3 and 3 because I picked Ben?
3 and 3. Yep, we split. Okay. Yep, we split. Split on that pick. So yeah, those were the picks. But yeah, we'll go. That's a good format for us to kind of run with.
Yeah. So takeaways from this. I mean, Rick continues to put up points. He's he's got Diggs and Nakua and Swift coming on really as a legit potential top 12 option moving forward behind the Eagles offensive line. What were your takeaways from Rick's team?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of highlighted them. I mean, Diggs going in those 3 receivers. Going back to the draft. I mean, Andy had taken Hill. I think Rick was right before me who took Diggs. Not expecting
right after Hill,
obviously, to fall. Yeah, fell right to me. So those 3 guys were in my mind interchangeable. I thought Kupp might have been at the time ahead of maybe Diggs at least. Maybe even Hill, to be honest with you. I
think I'm trying to think of my pre-draft rankings. I think I had Hill, Kupp, Diggs. I think, but it was close. They were all right like in a same. They were all in a tier for me. So it was.
I mean, 3 touchdowns. I mean, need we say more? I mean, Diggs he's
a monster.
Yeah, he's a top 3 wide receiver. That team was lights out on Sunday. Buffalo. That was a statement win for him. I think going into that game, Miami coming off a 70-pointer division game. Some people were projecting Miami and the Jets over them in that division could have been, a little bit of
I was.
bulletin material. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I had Buffalo missing the playoffs like a dumbass.
Well, yeah, things have changed now in that division a lot, but yeah, I mean, Josh Allen and Diggs, kind of picking up where they left off over the last couple of years together, that connection. So not really, anything crazy I didn't expect from Diggs to have from a week to week basis. The guy that we'll see where, the distribution comes to is this Nakua character. I mean, this guy has come out of nowhere from BYU and he's taken over that offense. Is it a system thing where Cup maybe was just a system guy with Stafford? It makes you think because the guy is on record pace. Again, now first I think that was his first touchdown this past Sunday.
Yes, it was.
But again, nine receptions, 163 yards, a 31 spot. I mean, the guy's been incredible since getting. I think it was $37. I just looked at it this before we came on that Rick spent on him. Pretty much well above whatever. I think I was the second highest bidder at 16. So I mean,
Okay.
not knowing what Nakua was going to necessarily be, he has been incredible. This is the second 30-point scorer. He hasn't had anything less than 12 on the year. With Cooper Kupp coming back, I'm obviously as an owner of Cooper Kupp, extremely intrigued to see what that offense is going to look like with both of them. I'm assuming Atwell comes down a little bit out of those two guys that've been kind of running the 1-2s for the beginning quarter of the year, we'll say. So yeah, we'll see where that distribution goes, but you can't think they're going to go away from him based on his production. But yeah, he's been really the guy that I would say Rick has really, really hit on. I mean, the rest of his team's really good. I mean, he has Patrick Mahomes, can't go wrong with Joe Mixon, who's usually been pretty steady, but no one behind him, as we mentioned last week, I think, when we were going through the rosters. Swift is really where he hit too. I mean, to your point, not knowing what was going to happen there in that offense with the way that they use running backs in Philly, he's really taken off in the last couple of weeks. And then, just shifting gears just to go over to Nils's team. I mean, we kind of both noted, unfortunately, that he's certainly trending down. Just based on, I think this might be his second or third loss in a row. I think it's his third loss in a row.
Is it?
Yeah, I think he won week 1 against Ben. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, 3 losses in a row for Nils, and again, some pretty big holes again highlighted kind of at his running back court. He actually got a good game from Najee Harris. I guess a respectable game for the 11 points, but again, to your point, going back to I think it was last week, his number one point guy, point player is his defense, which is number 5 overall right now, Dallas. I mean, everyone else isn't necessarily guys that you might think will pop off. I mean, Kirk hasn't had a down game considering his standards for the last, first 3 weeks. CeeDee Lamb hasn't really necessarily had a huge, game. He's been steady for him. Nice kind of bounce back game from McLaurin. But Stevenson, I mean, that's been the huge question mark for him all year. And now, slightly banged up. That offense just, I mean, again, they played Dallas, but they still haven't really looked very potent, in the passing game or the running game, speaking on New England. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, definitely a lot of questions. Unfortunately for Nils's team, I think in terms of the RB spots and just like a guy that he can consistently count on to your point, the Tyreeks and the Diggs and these guys that can just take over weeks for you, scoring 30 to 40 points on a given week. I necessarily don't see it on his roster, so he really needs that consistency across the board.
Yeah, agreed. Better week for Nils this week in terms of the point totals that he put up.
For sure.
I just feel like Nils's team, like I look at Nils's team and I'm like, I don't necessarily like cringe when I look at his team. Like it's not one that I'm like he's 1-3, he's in 10th. I think he's second to last in points for.
Yeah,
but
just ahead of me. Yep.
Yeah, I like overall I'm like, I feel like his team's like pretty solid. Like each week they should have a solid outlook, but he's got probably the best defense in the league. 100%. Definitely the best fantasy defense. Cousins, I always feel like, I mean, they're going to throw the ball 600 times. Lamb has been outside of the Jets game. He's been under 7 targets every game this
Mm,
year.
run heavy.
They, yeah, like I think Dallas is. I honestly think that their defense is hurting their offense because
100%.
they're just crushing teams and they don't have to throw,
Hmm.
and they're content just running their offense and chewing up the clock. McLaurin had a big game. I think the more and more he kind of comes away from that toe injury that he had, or was nursing, I think he's got a really solid outlook. I think coming into the year, at least I had questions on if Dotson was going to come and maybe take over some targets from Terry. I think that's sort of been put to bed. I think Terry's the no doubt one there, and that he's going to start commanding, more and more. He's got a beautiful matchup against Chicago tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the backfield though that Nils has kind of leaves a lot to be desired with Stevenson and Harris. They're kind of like a
Hmm.
similar type player where they don't look explosive when you watch them, but they just kind of get volume. But it's kind of empty volume. I think Stevenson, if he doesn't score, he's I think his ceiling's around 14. That's kind of what he was the first 2 weeks. But if he doesn't score, I know Zeke's now getting run.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think he'll be better. I know he's got Waddle. It was
Sure.
his first game back from a concussion. I think Waddle's someone that can have those spike weeks that we were talking about. I
Sure.
know Cousins very likely. This could have it was just a weird game in Carolina. Um, I think he threw a pick six on like the first drive at
Hmm.
like the 5. So, any sort of variance with that, I think Cousins probably would have got up to like 20, 23. But yeah, I think
Yeah, played a big. I
kind
mean, obviously, Ship
yeah.
Lizard having 145. I mean, that to your point. I mean, 111 is a pretty reasonable, a pretty respectful score, I should
Yep.
say, in this league for sure.
Yeah.
I think anything around that like 110 mark, will at least keep you in the hunt most weeks.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, again, not wasn't trying to bash necessarily the beef, but I think his running backs are certainly kind of his hole that he might need to fill, or hopefully, maybe Stevenson gets it going a little bit. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest takeaway because I just don't see Najee. He might give the consistency, of an 8 to 12 point, a week running back, but
Yeah.
he hasn't looked explosive enough. I mean, now Pickett, with an injury, I don't know necessarily what that offense is going to look like without him. If Trubisky has to slide in this week, so yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we'll get that. I guess we'll get to that with some of the week 5 stuff, but yeah,
Yeah.
I do think 111 is a respectful score again.
Yeah.
Rick, just we'll get to the power rankings, but I mean,
Yeah.
one of the better Ship Lizard teams that I can remember, at least in recent history. I mean, in terms of the team that he put together.
Yeah, agreed. I do agree with that. I know Rick always in the past couple years, I think he always starts off really strong. He always starts off maybe like 1-0, 2-0, has a lot of points and then really fizzles out. Um I don't know. From what I see from his roster and how it's constructed, I don't really see that happening. Even having Kittle as your tight end, like I know Kittle's been, pretty disappointing this year, but I mean, when he hits big. Like he gets in the 20s and can, lead you to a win that week. So
Yeah.
yeah, looks good for Rick kind of moving forward. Don't really feel a lot different about Nils' team. Maybe a little bit better than I did last week.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but
Good enough.
yeah, so we'll get to the power rankings then. But yeah, so the next matchup I have going down was
Game we
I
split on, I
have
think. Arby's
yeah,
and Finkel.
yep. So yeah,
Man,
so Arby's
did this not
huge
fit the
week.
billing of game of the week though? I mean,
It does. Yeah.
we called it. We
Anthony.
we thought this was going to be the
Yeah.
game of the week, and it certainly lived up to the bill. Go ahead, please. And you're about to go into it.
Yeah. So 175 to 140. I mean, nothing you can do. I mean, you put up 140, you should win.
Nothing
Um,
you can do.
yeah, can't do anything about that. I mean, even on his bench, I mean, my God, what are you gonna do? You can't, can't
Nothing.
can't kick yourself for anything. I think McCaffrey just jumping into Anthony's team because both of these teams, I think moving forward they're both going to be, I think, in my top 5 in power rankings. Oh shit, spoiler. But yeah, I think Daniel Jones, I mean, that was just bad spot. Ben's
Tough
team.
game.
Ben's team gets, yeah, he gets 100 from his first three players. Allen,
Over 100.
Allen, yeah, over 100, close to 110. Allen, I think he's the MVP favorite right now. He's just having a ridiculous season after that rough
Awful Jets game.
performance against the Jets. AJ Brown starting to kind of separate a little bit in terms of targets with Devontae Smith. I know AJ Brown has kind of, I think coming in, maybe it would have been like a 1A, 1B. I think AJ Brown is at least right now the clear alpha there. And then we need to have a conversation about Nico Collins. I mean,
Yeah.
he and maybe we can just kind of sidebar on Houston for a little bit, but
Yeah.
Nico Collins, I mean, he was coming into it. I know he was a lot of, if you look at or like would listen to anything, he was always kind of someone who people were talking about as potentially taking a step. He looked good
Mm-hmm.
toward the end of last year. You know, they get the upgrade with, CJ Stroud, who looks like a legit stud. Um, but I mean, Nico on 7 targets to go 168 and 2, or on 9 targets, excuse me, 7 catches, 168 and 2. I mean, he's 6'4, 215. He's real good after the catch. I mean, he looks like a
He's stud.
legit like wide receiver, like for on like a team, like a legit X receiver, and I think he's a high end wide receiver too at worst moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback a little bit, we'll go back and forth a little bit with this matchup because
Mm-hmm.
honestly, with all the points and the guys that were in this matchup, there's plenty to talk about. But yeah, I mean, Josh Allen again, you kind of highlighted it, top three, maybe a top two uh, quarterback. I mean, in terms of what was going into the week, into the season, I should say, and uh, just a phenomenal keep, obviously with him getting in. I think it was round two, right? Kept him in round two.
3.
Oh, three. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yep.
round three.
He would have been a second round pick
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So, yeah, good start to his team right there. I think we kind of highlighted a little bit of RB's team last week when you were asking me, are you a little bit surprised with RB's team? And I said a little bit just based off of um, the team that he has kind of constructed, but also just based kind of that running back spot that we kind of highlighted again with him last week. And then of course Derrick Henry comes back with a 26 point performance this week, throws a touchdown. You highlighted obviously his receivers. Nico Collins is wide receiver 5 right now in the year. And to your point, AJ Brown 14 or 13, targets in the last 2 weeks. So I think after week 2, there were certainly some discussions in that locker room as to how can we get this guy the ball and kind of seeing what we do when we do get him. I mean, 175, 9 catches and 2 touchdowns for AJ Brown. I mean, that was a hell of a game. And we kind of highlighted on the rest of his team a little bit. I mean, we gave
Yeah.
the Sam Laporta love a little bit last week. Just a kind of a solid 9 this week, nothing crazy, but again, going down his roster here. Now it'll be interesting when we get into the week 5 matchups and kind of talking about some of the questionable stuff with Zach Moss now.
Mm-hmm.
That Jonathan Taylor situation. I know he's got Rashad White obviously on the bench, so he does have a fill-in guy just in
Mm-hmm.
case Zach Moss isn't going to get the run totally this week. But yeah, I think Ben. I mean, 175 is just a ton of points. We didn't really
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of these totals, even with the double flex. So to have a week like this, to your point, I mean, his top, just even the top 4 scorers, if you look at it,
Yeah.
gets him to like 130 something. I mean,
Yep.
that's just a crazy week. So yeah, I mean, hats off. I mean, his team really looks, really solid, I should say, in pretty much the top 4 or 5 spots that he has listed, as we mentioned kind of last week when we were diving into some of the roster depth that he has, or the roster, I should
Mm-hmm.
say, lineup that he has. And I just shifting gears. I mean, I took Finkel. I just thought he was just been rock solid all year in terms of every position besides his quarterback, which again, Daniel Jones didn't have a great week with 8, but Keenan Allen kind of came back down a little bit, just 12. But again, we know what he's capable of. DJ Moore
Mm-hmm.
with a really nice pop, and then McCaffrey. I mean, he was a yard away from having 5. Yeah, unfortunately, does Shanahan, kind of play that up, saying he didn't know he could have broke the record? I don't know, but
Yeah.
what's
Real
your
quick,
thoughts on
San
that?
San San Francisco, get him the fifth touchdown.
It's
Like, come
unbelievable.
on, like,
Yeah,
come on.
I
Yeah,
agree. I agree. I mean, you're at the
yeah,
one. It's a franchise record. The guys, you've been riding them for a year and a half. Or what, has it been a year and a half? You got traded last year. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Roughly about a full calendar year, probably coming up soon.
yeah. I mean, you gotta know. You gotta know he
When
has
you gonna?
four.
When is Christian McCaffrey ever gonna have 4 touchdowns again? I mean, I know it's definitely possible because of how good he is, but like, come on, you're right there.
Unlikely that'll have five. I will say that.
Yeah,
So yeah, and then get the rest of his team. Nothing really crazy. I mean, again, 140. You're beating anyone that week outside of maybe one or two guys for a really really big week. I
yeah.
think he had the second highest total this week, or third highest total, I should say.
Yep,
Rick had
third.
a little bit more.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, and Ryan had
Oh, I'm
145. I
sorry.
think.
I'm sorry. Ryan did. So yeah. So the fourth highest score this week.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's just the unluckiness sometimes of playing fantasy football, even when you have a good
Yeah.
week. And your guy starts.
Yep.
I think Nico Collins scored that second one pretty late too. So yeah,
Yeah, I
so a
think so.
little salt in the wound at the end of that stretch of games there. But yeah, great matchup. I think to your point, I do think these two teams, at least how they're currently sitting and looking, are in that top half. We'll get to the rankings later, but definitely in the top half of the league for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't look at or Anthony's roster and see anything super concerned. Like I still have confidence in ETN moving forward. Evans, I still have really confident coming out of the bye next week. DJ Moore has been for as awful as Chicago's offense has been. DJ Moore has been really really solid for his team and looks like a legit really high end wide receiver too, kind of moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think for Anth, it is what it is. That shit, what are you gonna do? But putting out 140, at least you're tacking on a lot of points. Um,
Yeah, he's
but
unfortunately, with that big outburst, is now has the most points against. I mean, he did give up
oh
nearly 200 this week. So yeah, you're going to definitely be in the running for it. But
yeah,
yeah, he's
no
got the
doubt,
highest
no doubt.
points against now. So
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
again to your point, I do think these are two quality teams in
yeah,
terms of top to bottom.
yep. We touched on your matchup. Is it let's get to Steve
Riggs and
and
White.
Phil.
Yep.
That the lowest total points this week. I think collectively, at least the winning total was definitely by far the lowest.
160. Yeah. I
It
was gonna
was
say my
close,
matchup
close,
might be, but
close with
yeah.
your matchup, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, Phil gets a uh pretty good win, even though 91 and getting a win. Kind of thank the fantasy gods there.
Heck yeah.
But we both pick Phil or did we pick Steve?
We both picked Phil here, so this
Okay.
was again one of our wins. This was the one that was kind of hanging on the Austin Eckler, status
Right.
going in last week. So again, we were kind of looking at it without Eckler, which ended up being the case, unfortunately for Steve.
Yeah.
Steve gets his first loss here. Kind of jokingly, calling him a little bit of a fraudulent, one seed last week just based off of the points against and him getting 3 wins in a row. But again, just kind of looking at rosters, not a crazy, point total. We're going to kind of get into a little bit of like, I guess you want to call them studs and duds,
Yeah.
or some kind of play on that in a little
Yeah.
bit here. But, certainly, Jordan Love, over Fields, he obviously shelled out the fab for him. And obviously Justin Fields didn't give him any reason to start him, regardless of the matchup against Denver. But Eckler's hole is definitely hurting him for sure because he does have 3 really 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 good backs. I mean, Mostert we kind of touched on with that Miami offense. We'll see where that with the chain and that distribution goes kind of moving forward. If he's going to lose some touches, but I don't think Gibbs has even gotten off the ground. We'll touch on Montgomery in a little bit, but he still has certainly I think a higher ceiling. And then, Eckler's really only played 1 week for him. So, not having your first round pick, as I know pretty well here, not having your pick out for 4 weeks
Yeah.
it's tough. It's a tough hole to fill when you're expecting your first round pick to have 20, plus points a week and just kind of being a huge cog and getting to that, like I said, 110 mark, I think is a safe haven. 120, I think you're in a really good spot if you can get to that point. So having your top guy not there is really, really tough to fill. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean,
Especially after the big week one that he had too.
yeah,
Eckler, to be out for the next three is just it's putting a hole in his roster for sure.
big note that I just kind of highlighted was you always highlight the zeros, and Jordan Addison with a zero. That is, I've had three of those this year. It is brutal to look at
Yeah, it
from a
sucks.
fantasy standpoint. When you have a
Yeah.
zero, it really hurts. And I'm sure, seeing Fields kind of, do what he was doing, especially early on in that game. I'm sure he was kicking himself a little bit, saying like, damn, I could have had some points there. I think that was uh, the big difference there. I mean, those
Yep.
15 points, yeah, I would have gave it to him. So,
Yeah.
it's hindsight 2020, obviously, but
Yep.
going to Phil's team, Phil finds a way to win with 91 points and gets to 2-2. So, Adams 15, Stafford has just been passing yards, really, really efficient, not necessarily throwing the touchdowns as we mentioned. I think last week we mentioned he had two. I think he only threw one, right? He threw the one to Nakua in
he threw
overtime.
one. Yeah, he's got two on the year, I think. Three.
Yeah,
Three,
I think now. Yep. And then his running backs have been, Walker the third's been great. He hasn't really had Kelsey really do what we expect, Kelsey to do yet either. So it'll be, I think he has a solid team for sure. Now, flex spot's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic for him. Now with that kind of sliding down, now Sutton's been solid too, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, there's not a lot of bench depth for Phil, so he's going to really, really kind of be banking on those guys to kind of stay steady for him for the rest of the season, unless obviously he makes a move. So, yeah, I mean, kind of what we expected here. Missing Eckler in terms of the matchup. Again, nothing real crazy in the point totals as you mentioned either. Both sub 100. So that century mark, I finally cracked it this week. But
yeah, I think Steve, the loss that Steve had, those are the kind of ones that they suck, because if he would have stuck with Fields, who he drafted, even though he was getting dogged by everyone, he's puts up 2 weeks of 16, the week in Kansas City with 12.6. That if you get around less than 13 from your quarterback, that's you need huge weeks from everyone else, obviously. But to put up 35 and have that on your bench, I know what it's like to have 30 points sitting on your bench,
which we will be getting to shortly. But I think the flex play, like I mentioned, I mean, you're not scrolling down here looking at what he had on the bench. I mean, could he play Christian Watson in that Thursday night game? Maybe.
Same logic. We'll get to Montgomery, but it's tough to you kind of want to see it. And Addison has been pretty solid getting long touchdowns. So it's tough. It's kind of one of those things where always kind of woulda shoulda, but I think yeah, I know.
22 on the bench.
Just anytime anyone's playing Denver, just my God, play them, because they're historically bad. If you look at you see like numbers, my goodness, Vance Joseph has just taken that defense into the ground.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, all right, it is. So let's get to my matchup. So me and Ryan put up the second highest point total on the week. I going into Monday night, it was a whirlwind of emotions for me this week with fantasy, coming off of David Montgomery just going nuts on my bench, and then going into Monday night with DK, I was down. I think I was down 19, or no, I needed 19.1 from DK, and feeling good. He gets the touchdown in the first quarter.
Early, yeah.
Awesome. Thinking the Giants would not look horrific, and it wasn't meant to be. So, yeah, currently sitting at 0-4. You know, we said at the beginning it's kind of like a moving week, and week 5 is really where I think it's obviously a must win. Going 0-5, you know, obviously anyone can come back and rattle off wins, but it's slim. So, you know, kind of moving forward, need to get one. Thought I would get one this week. I know I picked myself to win. Ryan's got a really, really good team, but the way the variance worked with fantasy, I kind of just thought that it was maybe he would have a down or kind of a down week, and I would get one. Not meant to be, but ultimately, I feel good about my team, kind of top to bottom. You know, I think Anthony Richardson right now, you know, assuming he kind of stays healthy, I'm confident in him as like a top 7 quarterback kind of rest of season. I think his floor is super high. His ceiling is super high. Jefferson is a stud. He's my best player. He's the wide receiver 1. Kind of moving forward, I think each week him or Tyreek, you know, kind of how things shake out. I think obviously DK, you know, didn't really need to do much. I know once they got up, they just kind of ran the ball. They had that defensive touchdown. But you know, DK kind of moves into his bye, so maybe he starts to get a little bit more targets kind of moving forward. He hasn't really been targeted that much this year. He's just making his hay with touchdowns and, you know, efficiency, but maybe he gets a little bit more volume as they kind of move out of the bye, but you know, we'll see. Kamara coming back, we touched on it. He had 13 catches for 33 yards,
Insane
11
PPR
carries,
game.
51. I mean, that is insane volume. Coming back off the suspension, the news was that Kamara was prepping for a full workload. I mean, he got it, and I think he's pretty easily, you know, the Saints locked in RB1 moving forward, especially with Jamal Williams still on IR. Who knows when he's going to come back? I think he had a pretty serious hamstring injury. Jerome Ford, and this is where we get to me leaving Montgomery on the bench. So Jerome Ford, I thought would be a little bit better. I mean, I thought Watson would play. He obviously with DTR, he still, I think, got a majority of the work. You know, they were getting boat raced. I think in like the third quarter they were down 3 scores. So they're not running the ball. He's still got 6 targets. He's involved in the passing game. He's still the RB1 in Cleveland, even though they are getting Hunt and Pierre Strong involved. Higbee, actually, I was pretty surprised with Higbee. He's just highest target share of the year, highest target count on the year. He was involved often off that contract extension, so I'm pretty confident with Higbee moving forward. I think the Rams are going to keep throwing, and Higbee's, you know, their starting tight end, even if he is the 3rd target at best when Kupp comes back. So, but he at least will be on the field, and Cooper Kupp coming back can only help elevate the entire offense. So Gabe Davis has been really solid. He doesn't get a lot of targets, but he catches touchdowns, and that's what I'm looking for.
3 for 3. I mean, he's been
what I'm looking for in a flex.
Yeah, he's had a trio of them for the last 3 weeks. So he's caught one week 2 through week 4. So yeah, again, going back to that Bastards trade, which I had mentioned, you know, Brian Robinson in terms of his steadiness for his team, you know, just kind of as a fill-in, and now going to probably be a second running back when Saquon does come back healthy. Gabe Davis has certainly been, you know, just a nice spot for you. Obviously, you can't really necessarily trust your own guy, Garrett Wilson, right now. I mean, maybe he'll have a little bit of a bounce back if Zach Wilson can take some of that confidence from Monday night, you know, kind of moving into into the rest of the season, because he did have, you know, a ton of targets, as I think you were mentioning to us, you know, during the game, which I always find hilarious. As we know, you're watching the game and just
I'm furiously texting
us your feelings during it. I'm sorry, Monday. So I should say Sunday night, but yeah, it's it's definitely a good, good options to have, obviously, at wide receiver for you. I mean, we've talked about Jefferson, kind of going back to your team a little bit here. Just the consistency, I think 25 essentially throughout the first 4 weeks, which is
Yeah.
insane. Kamara, which, yeah, guys that would argue the half point PPR to the non PPR to the point PPR leagues. That would be the prime example if you did not want to play in a PPR league.
Yeah.
13
Fuck out of here.
receptions. I
Fuck
just
out of
saying.
here.
Just
Yeah.
play
No, I know. No, I
devil,
know. To
play
them.
devil's
To them.
advocate. Yeah,
To them.
sure.
To them.
But I agree with you. Yeah. So it's, it was, in that sense,
Yeah.
pretty awesome to see. 33 yards, 13 catches,
Yeah.
which is pretty insane. Higby, like to your point, I think he's always had pretty much a good floor in that tight end, tight end position, I should say, over the last couple years. Just a steady guy you can kind of put in there. Not a
He's got me
flashy
double.
name.
Yeah, he's got me double digits since I traded for him.
Yep, yep.
12 and 11 so far. So,
And we kind of talked about your strategy, I think, when you picked this guy. And then you kind of followed it up with Gino. Anthony Richardson, we weren't really necessarily sure. We kind of knew what the word was, how he looked, what his, comparable, players were. Obviously, Cam Newton's the biggest draw in terms of what he can do, but the guy looks the part. Again, three scores for you, gets to 33 points. I think he's starting to finally find his ranking a little bit, kind of moving into that top 10. I know this week for sure against Tennessee, he's definitely probably a top 10 play. So it's a guy that, to your point, is certainly trending up for your team. So again, scoring 134, hell of a week. Outside of maybe just one play that, of course, you can kick yourself as you're watching it.
yeah.
But yeah, that I think that overall was certainly something to feel good about. I mean, 0-4 is
Yeah.
not, but your team's putting up points, kind of
Strong
heading in the
week.
right direction, and you have depth. You have guys that are putting up points. So
Yeah.
shifting gears.
Yep. Let's move to the number one team in the power rankings, I believe. For both of us, at least this week, at least.
Sure.
Ryan's team. Takeaways on Ryan's team. I mean, steady across the board. Nothing. I mean, every one of his players outside of Pittman, had really solid weeks. Even Damian Pierce, I think, had his last week he had a season high, but this week another double digits. But yeah, Ryan's team, really, really good looking team. So what run us through his I mean, team and your thoughts.
I think kind of maybe as a backhanded compliment, last week I did say that I think there was a lot of stuff during Ryan's draft this year where I was like, damn, like that was a good pick. That was a good pick. Like I just remembered, him going through his draft and really, really liking what he did. And I think the one that highlighted the most for me was that Mark Andrews stack with Lamar Jackson. And sure enough, they hook up for 2 scores, which really sucks, obviously, to see on your end when the guy catches that second one for sure, especially when you're playing against that duo. Lamar Jackson runs in 2 more, so he's really looked electric again. Lamar Jackson this year, I think, for him. So that's kind of where he kind of starts his team. I think. I mean, Bijan being his number 1 pick. We weren't really sure. We knew how electric that guy was, but I didn't necessarily think it was going to be this consistent. I would say probably early on. I mean, at least for me, we weren't really sure what was going to happen with that rock. Algier obviously having 1,000 yards last year. They bring in this electric back as they're going to do some sort of thunder and lightning type deal with how they distributed it. But he's been great. 2021, I think he was 10 last week. Looking at it here and 18 this week. So I mean, that's again, to get Brandon Ayuk as well back. I think he's the clear number 1 receiver in San Fran.
He looks awesome. Like looks like he's leveled up as a receiver. He looks legit.
So to get that to throw in the mix, obviously St. Brown, with his keeper, that's a hit. I think the last couple of years, people have taken Ayuk late and just kind of hoped that with his talent and kind of what he could do, he would be doing what he's doing this year. but yeah, he's been really, really good and looked really, really good outside of
Mhm.
obviously just sitting week 3 with the injury. So
Yeah.
the one thing I wanted to note on Ryan, which I always think is I just thought was interesting kind of going through the league, was he's only made one move the whole year, which was the Kelly pickup, which I thought was pretty that's a pretty wild thing. The guy sitting in first place, you got to even just in terms of defense, just streaming different players. The fact that he's only made one move and that was the move he made, I just thought was interesting. I thought that was
That is
interesting, kind of looking back
yeah,
on it.
that is really interesting. I think that that's a testament to. I mean, Ryan, he
Good draft.
drafted Kareem Hunt before he was ever on a team. Had the patience enough to keep him.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I could tell you, I would have churned him from my roster immediately. I'm like, oh, he's not on a team week 1. Okay, see ya.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is opportunity for, if we're saying if he wants to make moves.
For sure.
If he does, there's opportunity. I mean, he can churn Elijah Moore if he wants to. That was
Yeah.
I've had my history with Elijah Moore, but that was one of the most ridiculous plays I've ever seen. That 20-yard loss on the run.
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway,
Elijah Moore, realistically, going to finally get his chance, I would say, with Cleveland. I thought week 1 watching that game with Cleveland and him getting 7 targets, I was like, okay, he might have
yeah,
a role in this offense, and he's had the targets. I mean, I'm looking at it here,
yeah,
which you don't necessarily look at the score, the box score, I should say, but he had 9, 7, 9, 9 the first 3 weeks. I mean, he was getting targeted, but
yeah.
yeah, we'll
It's
see. I mean,
yeah.
I was
It's
just gonna say,
mostly in jest.
yeah,
But
sure, I know, I know what you're saying.
it's just funny. I It's hilarious. I loved Elijah Moore when he was drafted, and then the Jets were on a five game winning streak, and he complained about not getting targets, and it was like, come on, man, read the room.
Yeah, well, he's a rookie,
Really good.
but
He's talent, but yeah,
all right,
Ryan's team looks solid. But
the
I
number
just
one.
totally cut you off. Yeah, looks good. Kind of moving forward. Um, so
To
yeah,
jump into.
we got through the recaps. Now would be a time where you want to hit that.
Yes, I do.
see if, see if we'll get it up. See how it comes through. I can't hear anything.
Oh no, hold on. I don't know how we're gonna play this,
I don't know. We're gonna have to figure it out. We're gonna have to get like a
but
soundboard.
it's all right. We're
Yeah,
getting
it's all
the
right.
graphics and the sounds, but
We're
I
getting
think
there.
I think the excitement's there, which is the big thing because
Yeah,
they've asked for it. We're gonna bring it. We're gonna bring it this week. A little new
yeah,
segment to the pod.
we're gonna bring it. So
Take it away.
the first segment that we're doing it's gonna be the first week of Runaway Train, and what this is going to be is basically every time after my matchup, I'm going to go on a rant about something. Probably keep it maybe to like 3 to 4 minutes. Not trying to take everyone's time and go on a rant for an hour, but I do want to just go and touch base on the Detroit backfield situation, because Thursday night was not only for me a range of emotions. If you were online or if you were on Twitter, X, whatever, the people were freaking out about Jahmyr Gibbs not getting touches. And I want to be very clear with everyone. I said this at the draft. This is not a 1A, 1B. David Montgomery is the starter. He is the clear starter. I will say, I think this is a moment of reflection for everyone in terms of ADP and overall ADP. I can maybe get in that another time. Jahmyr Gibbs, to me, is a really, really good player. And I think he's explosive as hell. He's an awesome receiver out of the backfield. That doesn't matter right now, because David Montgomery is the clear number 1 running back in Detroit, and he should be treated as such in terms of his projected points per week, in terms of how he's viewed rest of season. I think there is a clear gap between him and Jahmyr Gibbs, and that was on full display when they were beating down the Packers on Thursday. Let me give you why, going into the draft, David Montgomery was my locked in RB1 that I wanted on my team. I knew I could get him in the 5th round. I knew I didn't have a fourth round pick, so I had to transition to getting a running back in the fifth round. The reason why I wanted David Montgomery, couple things. First off, David Montgomery on the first day of free agency back in March signs a 3-year, $18 million contract with the Detroit Lions. They let Jamal Williams, who scored 17 touchdowns the year before, walk. And they signed and prioritized David Montgomery, 3 years, $18 million. He's the 13th highest paid running back in the league. To me,
It's good stat.
To me, that signals that they are prioritizing this player. They view him as a massive upgrade to Jamal Williams, and they think that he is a perfect fit for what they want to do and what Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, want to do for this offense. And what they did to the Green Bay Packers is exactly why I wanted David Montgomery, because he's going to score touchdowns. And that's what you need in fantasy. Another reason, so since let me read you the snap percentages. So in the 3 games that David Montgomery has played, he has a 65% snap share. In Jahmyr Gibbs's games that he's played 4, he has a 43% snap share. That is sort of buoyed by week 3 when Montgomery was out and Gibbs was the lead back. Carry counts, Montgomery, week 1, 21, Gibbs 7. Week 2, Montgomery 16. He left with an injury, Gibbs 7. Week 3, Gibbs was the main running back, had 17. Montgomery was out. Week 4, the carry distribution was 32-8.
Yeah. Yeah, they couldn't stop. The Packers couldn't stop him. I mean, he was killing us. Yeah.
32-8. They were up 4 scores, or what I forget the
It's 28
point
to
total that
3,
they
I
won
think.
by. It was 20. They were up a lot, and they were
Yeah.
running the clock at the end of the game. I thought for certain they were going to put Jahmyr Gibbs in to get him work. No, they wanted to get David Montgomery as much work as he can because they know that he's going to pound the rock up the middle where they want to run behind their mauling offensive line. Everyone online, if you went online, you will see people freaking out about these yards per carry warriors that go on and on about Gibbs averaging 5 yards per carry, Montgomery's averaging 3.5. Why don't they give more work to Jahmyr Gibbs? Why do they keep running David Montgomery? The reason why they run David Montgomery is because he turns 0-yard gains into 2. He turns 3-yard gains into 5. He always falls forward. I don't care if you think he's going to only get what's blocked. He is exactly what they want. He doesn't fumble. He's awesome in pass protection. That's why he's playing on third downs, and he's their preferred goal line back. Jahmyr Gibbs was never that. Going back to Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't even a goal line back at Alabama. He didn't pass protect at Alabama. Jahmyr Gibbs is 5'9", 200 pounds. He's not going to ever get goal line work this year over David Montgomery, or even likely next year, because David Montgomery, again, signed that 3-year, $18 million contract. This is not me bashing Jahmyr Gibbs. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's an awesome player. I think this isn't even me bashing Steve for taking him where he took him. I think that's probably where he should have been drafted because that's where his ADP was. I think it's a collective hive mind that we get in the fantasy industry and the fantasy community where all of these major platforms push up these players because they see Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted 12th overall, which is a whole nother conversation. But again, he was drafted 12th overall because he's an awesome player. He's just not the lead back in Detroit. And I think that's fine. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be fine. I think he's going to get more work as the year goes on. I think he's probably going to finish with probably 70 to 80 catches. Maybe. I mean, he's got to ramp that up, but that's kind of where I was valuing Gibbs the entire way. So I just want to make it clear that Yahoo, your projections, they're wrong. And they just adjusted it, and Gibbs was taken down to 11.5. That's probably where he should be because his floor has been awesome. I mean, again, going back, Jahmyr Gibbs is not a bad player. I think he's a really, really awesome player, and he's a weekly flex option. Like, if I had Jahmyr Gibbs on my team, I would lock him into my flex and not think about it. But again, he's 5'9", 200 pounds. I saw people comparing him to Alvin Kamara. Maybe they run sort of similarly, and he has really good contact balance, but he's not going to get the goal line work that Kamara does because Kamara's 5'10", 215. That's a totally different body type for a running back. And I want to say, I don't think people were paying attention to what this Lions offense is going to be. And that's maul the shit out of you with their offensive line and give the rock to David Montgomery because he doesn't lose yards, doesn't fumble, and he's going to score touchdowns. And that's why we all need to shift our brain. Not you guys, not our league, the entire industry of people who play fantasy football. Because everyone was saying Jahmyr Gibbs, it was going to be a 1A, 1B. I never thought that. I always thought David Montgomery was a starter. So that's the runaway train this week. David Montgomery is a top 10 running back moving forward. He's a locked in RB1 every week. And that's where I'm at. Still think Jahmyr Gibbs is a good flex play, but we need to get off of Detroit's back for not giving him more touches because they're 3-1 and they dominated the Packers. Even when they were losing a negative game script, David Montgomery was getting carries in week 1 in Kansas City. This is what it is, and we need to embrace it. So that's the runaway train. That's where we're at. Oh, and David Montgomery has 5 touchdowns this year. He can score 3 touchdowns in a game. So
well, let's hope after this first edition of Runaway Train, he's locked into your lineup moving forward.
He is, yes. And to put a caveat on that, I was tilting my ass off that entire game because not only did I draft this player to be my RB1, but I sat him because he was declared inactive by Tom Pelissero that morning and a false report, and then said, "Oh no, he is going to play." So I'm like, all right, well, maybe they'll give him like 12 touches. They'll probably give Gibbs a lot more work. No, he gets his career high in carries.
32. Yeah. I had some shares of Montgomery last year, obviously with the Bears, not with this Lions team, but being a guy that saw him a lot in the division. I mean, I was always kind of a fan of David Montgomery. I always thought he was, one of those guys that was a workhorse, obviously for the Bears, now for the Lions. To your point, and I mean, to your point, these Lions coached by Dan Campbell, they want to control the line. They want to beat the shit out of you. And that's what they really did on both ends to the Packers, offensive line and defensive line. Really just was a story of that game on both ends. And to your point, again, David Montgomery, they needed to run the clock out, and they knew that they were going to be able to do that with that line doing what they were doing to the Packers. So, yeah, I mean, again, I just had a lot of smiles and laughs at that because, it's you and I have some exchanges obviously during the week for this, and Thursday night being the Packers, playing the Lions. Yeah, that was really tough to see, especially because we were both sitting at 0-3. Kind of, I would think rooting for both of us to get at least a W. So yeah, that's tough, and obviously him taking the place of, I guess, Ford. I think
would have won me the matchup.
Or even Gabe Davis, I guess, if he would have played 3 running backs at that point, probably would have got it to you too. Yeah. But,
either way, would have won me the week. So I was also very tilted about that. But back to that, I feel personally really, really solid about Kamara and Montgomery as my running back tandem. So I will say for those people who online, the yappers that say stop giving the ball to David Montgomery because he's mid. No, he's not. He's pretty good at what he does. Yes, he's not Saquon fast. Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs is electric. But watch David Montgomery run behind the offensive line. He's going to get 5. He's going to get 7. They're going to stay ahead of the sticks. And watch his touchdown run in Kansas City from like 8 yards out. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a good player. Week 5.
Yeah, that was great. That was awesome. Let's go to week 5.
Let's get into week 5.
Quick. Yeah, let's run through this. That was quick, I should say, but we'll go through. We kind of
we touched on. I think we touched on a lot of players kind of moving forward, but we can kind of see where things stand with where guys are kind of playing. So let's start. We started with you. Yeah, let's start with you.
Start with me.
Got a tough draw this week.
For sure. Yeah. So I mean, we both projected, or I should say, predicted Aaron to beat me last week, including myself in that matchup, just based on
Okay.
kind of matchups and stuff like that. That was last week. So I'm gonna. I mean, this is a tough one for Green Bull. I mean, a lot of variables again with Cooper Cup. So
Yep.
T Higgins probably won't play. I mean, he's obviously in that lineup right now, at least on my end. So we'll see what happens there. Probably going to sit Burrow. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Have
it's
to.
it's hard to trust him. Goff's home against Carolina, so I
Have
think
to
I like
sit
that
Burrow.
matchup.
Yeah.
Mahomes against Minnesota on the other side of things for Rick is, yeah, it's tough. I mean, that guy just puts
Yeah.
up points, and Minnesota's a dog shit defense. So
Yeah.
that's tough to see across the board there. Then kind of moving forward, I mean, if Cup doesn't come back, you got to expect Nakua even against Philly to put up some points. Diggs is going to kind of be him. I mean, it's always a little weird playing in London, so I'm kind of hoping that game against Jacksonville and Buffalo, between Jacksonville and Buffalo, is just kind of one of those weird low scoring London games that we've kind of seen over the past couple
Yeah.
years when they play over there. But
Yeah.
um, and then kind of going through the rest of kind of our matchups. I mean, it's pretty kind of level, I would say, moving forward. Just kind of looking through outside of the top receiver spots, because I think he's definitely got the edge there. He's got the edge of the quarterback spot for sure in terms of matchups. Running backs are pretty even, I would say. I mean, he's got Mixon and Swift. I got uh, Cook, Jones, and or Jacobs, however you want to kind of play them out. Tight end spots pretty much even. I don't expect Cole Kmet to do 27 every week, but him and Kittle, I would say they've been kind of a wash in terms of what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I think the top heavy spots for him in terms of wide receivers and quarterback are gonna be the big difference maker in this matchup, unless I can make up some points otherwise. So
Hmm.
yeah, tough draw for me. I mean, nice to get off the wagon and be 1-4, or I'm sorry, 1-3 going into week 4. Cooper Cup's going to be the big difference for me. I mean, if he does play,
Yeah.
is there a snap count? Do they use him the same way? I mean, they're playing at home against Philly, so it's a tough test for him for sure. But you would imagine that they're going to need to be thrown as they have been. Actually, a pretty balanced offense, I should say, for the Rams. But yeah, I would hope to see Cup play this week. That would be a big boost just for my morale. I think at this point,
Yeah.
now that I've had to watch my lineup go through what they've gone through, and last week was the first week, as we noted, that I cracked 102. So getting past that century mark. So yeah, I mean, if you see anything else different, I mean, break it down if you want, but that's kind of where I see it. Those three cogs for him: Nakua, Diggs, and Mahomes. Those are the guys that are kind of setting him apart, in at least this week's matchup.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. I mean, even Rick slotting in Marquise Brown into his flex with Godwin on the bye. I mean, it's a tough draw. Tough draw for sure. I mean, anything can obviously happen. Aaron put up less than 70 last week, but yeah, tough draw. You do have favorable matchups though.
I do.
I will
I do.
say.
Should we do the
Um,
pick'ems while we're doing this?
yeah, go for it. I'm gonna pick Rick.
Yeah, I picked Rick. Yeah, I picked Rick too. So,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know. Call it my pessimistic saying it's over type spiel
The
that
reverse
all my
jinx.
yeah, there you go, the reverse jinx. Trying to put on myself for the second week in a row. Because we did pick Aaron last week as well. But yeah, I think as we get to the power rankings to kind of close out our segment here or the pod,
Yep.
I do think
Yep.
Rick's got just a really really solid team.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take a pretty big week from, again, a couple of those running backs to get going for me. Have a couple scores. Uh, Again, don't expect anything from Komet. And then again, maybe a subdue game from Mahomes and Diggs. So we'll see. But yeah, I got Rick in that one as well.
Yep.
Let's move out. Let's move down to Bastards and Tiburon. So Tiburon being the hot guy right now. He's at 3-1. He's the number one seed. Playing against the Bastards, who's got kind of an interesting lineup, obviously with some buys this week. Obviously, Herbert being on bye is huge, I think,
Huge.
for his team. So that's a big miss for him. Still more to come with Barkley for him, so that could be a big a big piece for him to kind of bring back into the fold of things, especially on a week where you're missing your quarterback. Although Josh Dobbs has been randomly decent.
Yeah, Josh
So
Dobbs he's provided a really solid rushing floor.
yeah.
But yeah, he's actually played really like like not in terms of fantasy, but he's been like a pretty solid real life quarterback.
Yeah, but if you like again, missing a guy like Herbert, I think just makes the projections obviously look a little uglier for sure this week. I mean, it's probably the most lopsided, I think, projections. I haven't really scrolled through all of them, but 111, just looking at it on the front here to 88. Not that we can take a lot from it, but I do think it's going to be an uphill battle here for Logue.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
And we know how good.
Why is Brian Robinson only projected 10.15?
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Yeah, but again, I mean, just looking at matchups, looking at what he's got, um, he's got to play Pickens this week for sure, and Tank Dell, because Cooper's
Yeah.
sitting. So, not a crazy firepower. Just compared to the other side, which we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier with the week 4 matchups. I mean, Tiburon's team's hot. I mean, another division game. Lamar Jackson and Andrews playing at Pittsburgh. So that's always a deadly duo, just kind of to start the week out.
Yeah.
Bijan playing at home against Houston, another tough one. And then, I think you would think the Ayuk matchup against Dallas with Diggs maybe being there would have been a little bit of a different story, at least on the corner there. But and then Buffalo playing in London against the Jags. So we'll see. I mean, I do think I got Ryan here. I mean, I think it's an uphill climb here for the Bastards, especially this week with missing a couple guys on bye. And I think Ryan's team's kind of humming. From top to bottom, he doesn't really have a weakness. He has a couple guys that are questionable. I'm not really sure. I thought St. Brown was fine. I think he came back in right last week.
Yeah, he's out with an abdomen injury.
Yeah, just looking at
but
that.
I haven't seen anything that's concerning. I'm fairly confident he's going to play.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we're both in agreement there. I mean, take it away if you want anything to chime in on top of that. But I got Tiburon in what I think is going to be a pretty comfortable win for him.
Yeah, I think I agree. Pittsburgh's D, they got lit up by Stroud last week. I think Lamar and Andrews can kind of keep it rolling. I think with Trubisky, I think Baltimore might roll over Pittsburgh this week. Pittman has a really solid matchup in Tennessee. They've been a pass funnel all year. Obviously, the Bengals couldn't take advantage of it last week, but Bijan against Houston. I mean, Bijan's he's just as consistent as they come. Top 5 moving forward. Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to. It's tough for me to envision a way that Logan would kind of get a win. Obviously, again, anything can happen. Miami's D, he does have Miami's D. They get the Giants at home.
It's true.
So maybe a couple defensive scores. Who knows?
Yeah. All right, we're agreeing there. Well, so we're 2
got
for
Ryan.
2.
Both got Ryan there.
Yep.
I got then Anthony and Steve.
Anthony and Steve.
Anthony starting Sam Howell as a streamer this week, benching Daniel Jones. Maybe. I mean, he's got Howell in his lineup, so I'm assuming he's rolling with him because they play tomorrow. So
home against Chicago. I mean,
yeah,
sick of seeing what Daniel Jones is doing for him, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't know how you can start Daniel Jones at this point. I don't know. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this matchup, and I have no gauge on where things could be. Like to me, like this matchup, I honestly think this is just totally up in the air.
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's like 2, and this was one of them that again we're kind of looking at before we got on here. I was like, I don't even necessarily have a feel per se on this one, and then there's another matchup we're going to get to that I also think is a coin flip. Sam Howell, I actually didn't really notice that he had plugged in there, but looking at his quarterback options, yeah, again, how can you play Daniel Jones at Miami too? Like that's a tough one, and then Dak goes Sunday night prime time, like at San Francisco. So yeah, I could see the appeal for streaming Hal this week.
Yeah,
Playing at
yeah,
home against Chicago,
yep.
you can't do worse than those other
He
two
played
guys.
well
At least
last played well last week against in Philly.
yeah. And then going on the other side, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but I think there is a conundrum when you have almost too many options, right? As a fantasy owner, I think so. This whole Jordan Love, Justin Fields, and even CJ Stroud now for Steve is, it does play mind games on you. I think. I don't know. At least for me, maybe I'm more mental about it than some
Definitely.
get. But you got to think about matchups and who's playing on the offense and not, especially when you're streaming or running through multiple quarterbacks.
Yep.
So it makes it tough. I mean, he's going to go. It looks like he's got Jordan Love here at Vegas. He's obviously starting Watson, which I kind of touched on last week on that like
He's got
mini
that
stack.
stack. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know why I call it mini, but I don't think Watson's necessarily a top tier player yet. He could be, but yeah, kind of looking at it on paper. I mean, he pro. I would I would lean, I guess, a little bit just on the sheer Christian McCaffrey front, but again, he's playing against Dallas, so we don't know necessarily what he'll do. But he's just been so hot that it's hard to look past a guy like that in anyone's lineup. But yeah, this is a coin flip, man. I think I'm going to give the slight edge just on paper right now to Anth, to Finkel. But it's a tight one. I mean, again, it's a coin flip. I mean, Brees Hall, he's gonna have to play this week. Anthony, for the first time, he's probably playing his keeper. So we'll see. I mean, he's got a couple guys on bye, as we noted. Keenan Allen's on bye, Mike Evans is on bye. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think it's going to just have a couple guys that pop. For either one of those guys to change this matchup. I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick Anthony too. I think it'll be pretty close. I do think. I think there's going to be a point where Devontae Smith he's gonna catch like 2 touchdowns in a game. It happened last year against Washington, and I think it was kind of around week 3, week 4. So maybe he kind of gets going here. It's tough though, like because I mean,
Yeah, we're both kind of kicking around.
Mostert against the Giants, but like at this point with like I know Mostert might still be the starter, but I don't know how you can feel great about Mostert with A-Chain playing as well as he is.
Yeah,
And this is kind of the same with Gibbs. Like, I mean, not we'll get there with Montgomery, but going back to him, he plays Carolina. The game script in that game
run.
that's
Yeah,
going to be David Montgomery.
yeah. You
Gibbs
think
maybe Gibbs catches a pass for
breaks
a
one?
touchdown or gets a goal line carry or something, randomly. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Anthony. I think Christian McCaffrey goes. I think Brees Hall is gonna run all over Denver.
I think
He's
so too.
we got the news that there's no more limits. I know they were, I predicted that they would limit him at the beginning of the year. Dalvin Cook looks awful, and
Terrible.
Michael Carter is still going to get his work, but Zach Wilson, I think, looking pretty decently competent last week, surprisingly.
For sure. Yeah.
I think Brees is going to go nuts in Denver like he did last year before he tore his ACL in that same game. So, yeah, I'll give the edge to Ant. Yeah, I think he kind of keeps it rolling, but I do think it's going to be close.
I agree. Good matchup there. Tight matchup.
Yeah.
Rolling down. Who do you got? Who do you have next here? Because I mean, our
I
screens might be a
have
little different.
I have Arby's and Andy.
Oh, you're saving yourself for last. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, they were just at the top.
Was it
just,
okay?
Just kind
Because
of
you
going
were
down.
you were right after me.
We can go to my matchup. Let's go to my
Let's
matchup.
go.
Let's
You
go to
and
my
beef.
matchup with Nils.
Break it down.
Yeah, so where I'm at, this is the highest point total I think I've been projected all year. Anthony Richardson is finally over the 20 mark, which I thought he should have been to start the year. Jefferson, I am starting Garrett Wilson. Maybe I'm riding the Zach Wilson looks pretty solid, but it's honestly it's a really good spot for the Jets to get
Denver.
to stop their 3-game losing streak in Denver.
Yeah.
I always thought I was like Garrett Wilson or Zach Wilson. He's went to BYU, probably fine in altitude. And the Jets last week, honestly. So one thing why I like, and I think this is sustainable for Zach Wilson, at least to a point. I don't think he's going to play as flawlessly as he has been. Um, so the Jets with Zach Wilson, when he came in Buffalo, they were at, I think, like a 46% neutral script pass rate, which is one of the lowest in the NFL. When they played Kansas City, they were up at 61%, which is eighth. And that stat is courtesy of Josh Norris for Underdog Fantasy. But that to me
Good shout out.
says that's probably the way that it's going to work moving forward, where they're going to, instead of run, pass and hide Zach Wilson, they're going to let it rip. And that's what you need to do with him. So Garrett Wilson, I think, coming off is in a pretty good spot. Kamara in New England, I think it could be like a similar kind of script for him as last week, where he just gets a ton of catches, especially if Carr's still nursing the shoulder injury. I still think they should have just played Jameis Winston. But New England, they lost Christian Gonzalez for the year.
Yeah,
he was just placed on IR this year. He was a baller. He was
we
a
mentioned
really
him in the
solid
last
player.
pod, I think. Yeah.
I do think we'll get to Olave when we get to Aaron's team, but I think Kamara, it should be pretty solid. Very confident in Montgomery kind of going down. He's got Carolina, who man, I don't know what confidence Panthers fans can have in their team right now. I mean, they're a mess.
They stink.
Yeah. Higbee, just going to get targets. Playing Zay Flowers, he's actually had he's all over the place. He's all over the place. 10, 5, 10, 4 targets. 9 catches, 4 catches, 8 catches, 3 catches. I don't know if they know what they want to do with Zay Flowers on a week-to-week basis, but he's my best option to play against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh just got roasted by CJ Stroud last week. And I picked up Detroit's D. Surprised that there wasn't more bids for them. I bid 5, and I think the only other person to bid was your brother.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it. I mean, I had the Saints. Going back to that matchup, I got the Saints D against New England. I kind of was like, but I think they're the streaming option.
Yep.
Yeah, at least around leagues that we're looking to stream a defense for sure. So
and their defense has been really solid. Anthony what the fuck is his first name?
Aiden
Hutchinson has been a monster this year. Leads
their
line pressures, and Carolina's offensive line is a disaster. Going over to Nils, I think Nils actually has. I think his team's actually in pretty good spots this week.
I agree.
Surprisingly, I think Kirk Cousins is going to have to throw a lot. I think he could be looking at close to like a 26 to 30 point game from Cousins. Lamb, I think Lamb will be fine. I think Waddle can be a really good gets right spot for the Giants as they continue to unravel.
Yep.
Stevenson, who knows? I don't know with Stevenson. Harris is in a rough spot in Baltimore, I do have to admit. I could see a bounce back game from Hunter Henry. I think McLaurin's going to get his. I think he scores tomorrow. And man, Baltimore and Pittsburgh that could be ugly.
Yeah, especially if Pickett doesn't play and Trubisky's at the helm. I think looking at it on paper, I mean, the Cousins matchup, to your point, for Nils is certainly a pass first, or a passing game, I should say, because they're playing Kansas City. But you having Jefferson, I think, takes a little bit out of that. Just having that quarterback. I agree with you across the board with Nils' team. I think there's some good matchups and some pretty tough ones. When it comes to like Najee and Stevenson, we don't know what that volume is going to look like, but I do think Waddle will have a bounce back game. To your point, McLaurin I like, and Lamb I like. We kind of knew Nils had really good receivers. I mean, I think he was the most receiver heavy team in the draft, and this is going even back when he had Olave too. So he had some really, really good wide receiver depth coming out of the draft. So his receivers aren't his issue by any means in terms of question marks on a week to week basis. So looking at it and then going across over to you, I mean, you kind of nailed it. The only thing, I guess you're gonna assume that Gabe Davis, that touchdown streak probably ends this week if you're playing Zay Flowers over him in the flex. That's pretty much the only
Yep.
thing that you could look at in question, because obviously the rest of your matchups, or guys that you could play, I should say, would be on bye. I mean, Metcalf and Ford. So
Hmm.
you got to
Yep.
play somebody there.
Yeah, I just don't want to bank on a guy scoring a touchdown 4 straight weeks.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and it's certainly possible, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I got you
That
getting your
kind of
first
stuff.
win. I think I'm gonna go pain train this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna choose myself also. I feel
Wow. All right.
I do. I don't think I don't think it's not to take away from Mills's team or anything. I think Richardson is going to get close to 30 again because he's the entire offense. I think Jefferson is just going to get his. I think Garrett Wilson scores, and I think David Montgomery is going to continue and score 2 more touchdowns. So I think that's kind of where it is. And I do think picking up Detroit can give me a pretty solid defense floor, maybe getting like 10 to 12 points. So,
I agree. All right,
but yeah, are we in
I would
lockstep
say,
still?
yeah, we're locked up here, but I think we got. I mean, the one that we both agreed on was that I thought was kind of like the question mark, like kind of matchup, was the previous matchup that we just talked about. So that one I thought was like the coin flip one between Finkel and Riggs. Now there's another one. I think we should go to that one last, because I think that could also be the game of the week. So I want to skip ahead of that one if that's in the order. I want to go to the Bandits and Colombian White.
Yep.
So I'll lead this one a little bit. I guess I'll dive into Aaron, since I'm kind of familiar with it just from last week. Good matchups, I think. I mean, kind of just looking off the top. I mean, Olave is the only question mark again, just because of that, that New England matchup. Again, Gonzalez getting hurt. That really that hurts. I think it helps him, I should say. It hurts New England a little bit, but Carr's status, we'll see. Pollard at the Niners at home. That's an interesting one too. I think Chase is going to eat this week. Tua's got a really nice matchup against the Giants. Sanders, I don't know. Sanders has been kind of trending down a little bit. I know he's got the questionable tag, and I think he's been ceding some work last week to Hubbard, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll see there. I mean, Ridley at, I mean, say at Buffalo. They're obviously in London.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I hate when they do that, but don't hate that matchup necessarily. But I do think Buffalo, if they keep rolling, again, these London games are so odd, you never know. And I like the Washington play on Thursday night in terms of his defense. Just kind of looking at it as a head, he's got a pretty substantial projection differential, I should say, between him and Phil.
Yeah.
And then Phil, like I said, I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit. I think Stafford against Philly, yeah, I think he's steady, but again, not a guy that's going to light it up to any means. He hasn't really done that. He's just kind of been a steady quarterback this year. Adam against the Packers, I think he's going to kill us.
Revenge game.
Yeah, revenge game. I mean, Jair hasn't played in 2 weeks. I don't know what his status is going to be, even if he did play. I expect Jimmy G is going to be back this week, I think.
Yeah,
so
probably.
So I think that offense, kind of is certainly whole again, at least in terms of it. And I don't even think it really matters with Adams. I mean, I think he had 15 last week, anyways. He had 15 last week. So yeah, I mean, he's going to have a big game. Michael Thomas is going to be an interesting play for him. Again, just not knowing necessarily what that offense is going to look like in New England and who's going to be getting the touches. And then I think, the real big hole that I'm looking at is obviously his flex. And then he's just picked up AJ Dillon and kind of slid him in there for his running back too. So not a great play. Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan of that.
Yeah, your face kind of says it all, but
maybe he throws in Gibson tomorrow night and prays.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's definitely, I guess, or maybe plays one of those Chiefs running backs and just hopes they score a touchdown, right? I mean, I think I would take a flyer on one of those guys over AJ Dillon just based on what.
Yeah, I would too. What confidence do you have that AJ Dillon's gonna do anything?
He's been terrible. I mean, the fact that he was dropped, I think, speaks volumes. Just looking at it on paper, even without that decision, I'm going to go Bandits here.
Yeah, Yeah, I think I agree. I think I do think I do I think this could be sneaky high scoring. Because I think Stafford they're gonna throw against Philly. But Stafford's not really throwing touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
the
I'm
Bandits.
gonna go with
Bandits
Aaron.
have the yeah the Bandits have the second highest projection right now, which again we don't take much on, but yeah, I do think you're kind of just looking at it on paper. I think the Bandits again maybe kind of bouncing back from their dead week against me.
Yeah,
They just have some good
kind of
matchups.
how it
So
goes. Yeah, too, and that's kind of how it goes too. It ebbs and flows like that. So I think Aaron's in a pretty good spot here.
I
Um,
think let's go to the last one. I think this is the one that's going to break the deadlock because I'll let you go first. Because this one's right down the middle for me too. This was like another one where I didn't really get a vibe on either, and I think this is going to be a tight one. So we got
yeah,
Arby's against Andre. Go ahead.
3 versus 5. Yeah, I man, it's difficult for me to choose these matchups because like Tyree can get like 40
Yeah.
and it just wins the week for you.
Well, this
Um,
one I think has the most discrepancy because, I mean, right now Andre has Jonathan Taylor in his flex,
good point.
um, and Debo Samuel might is like questionable with, and he didn't really look good that last week. Really, I mean, he played, but I mean, he didn't really do much. So, does if Zach Moss plays, does
Yeah,
Arby's
well,
throw him up there?
that's interesting because if Taylor's out, Ben's immediately putting in Zach Moss.
Yeah, they're playing
I
intense.
mean,
Yeah, yeah.
off pretty
Yeah.
bad matchup, but he's been I
He's gonna
mean,
get the
he's been
touches.
getting all the
Yeah,
work. Yeah.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a tough one. A lot of players that could go off.
I know. I know. I'm so concerned about Devon A Chain just being like Chris Johnson 2.0 and just like scores 30 every week. Um,
Very tough.
I'm gonna take Andre in this
Oh,
matchup.
that's where we split. I think I'm gonna go Arby's here.
Okay.
Maybe for the sake of the show and the pod, I want to just have something different.
We can't be in lockstep and everything.
But I for some reason I just do think that he potentially could have a steadier. Now Jalen Warren is a little concerning for me for his RB2, and like I said, I kind of noted the whole Debo thing. Um, but I do
Yeah.
think AJ Brown against the Rams. I mean, he's been eating. Josh Allen's going to get his against Jacksonville. Nico Collins has been trending. I mean, I don't think he's going to fall off.
Yeah, and
Fall off. And then Derrick Henry.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are some big horses. Again, I'm not saying Andy doesn't have any on his side. Obviously, Hurts is going to be throwing the rock to AJ. Tyreek can always go off. Tyler Boyd might be a sneaky play this week with Higgins being on, or
Yep.
being out, I should say. And then again, we talked about his running back duo there that are, I think, 3 and 4 collectively in terms of the running back rankings right now in terms of points per game. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that Taylor thing is going to be an interesting play and kind of changing the matchup here. So I'm gonna stick with Arby's. I think he stays hot. I mean, it's hard
Yeah.
to not go with him after a 175 point week, but
For sure.
um, yeah, I'm gonna split there. I think I'm gonna go with Arby's. Another tight one, and I think I
Cool.
I highlight this one as the game of the week for me.
Yeah, question for you. What if what do you so who would you play if Jonathan Taylor sits?
Yeah, I mean that's a great. Actually, I was kind of looking at that right now because to be honest with you, with Johnson out for him, I mean he's gonna have to take another flyer. I mean Roshan. I mean who's he? I don't even necessarily know what his thought process is.
I'll tell you who I'm playing.
Go ahead.
I'm playing Michael Wilson. And
Yeah, he's been great.
I'll tell you why. Um, I think,
I should say he had a great week. I shouldn't say he has been great, but
yeah, he had a good week. I think he's the no doubt second option in their receiving core at least. And I think they're playing inside. Like I just feel better about taking a shot on a guy who can put up 26 points in a week than randomly trying to throw it at someone who hasn't done that. That's me. If I didn't go with Wilson,
No, I think that's the play. I like that. I
yeah,
like that.
I don't know who else unless I mean, you're praying for something with Shaheed, but I don't
So
know how
so if
you play. I
we're
don't know how
gonna
you play
go,
Shaheed with Carr's shoulder. Like, I don't know.
not
Can't do that. Can't do that.
I wouldn't play the third wide receiver on New Orleans, that's for sure.
Who
But
literally got 6 points because he took a punt to the house. And I like Shaheed. I think he's an awesome
no,
player.
I mean he
But
definitely is the, he could definitely take the he's the flyer, right? Like that
yeah,
that's definitely the guy that's there. But going back to Arby's here, I mean, I guess not a lot of waiver moves. So I mean, again, there's not really much to touch on, so we're gonna kind of skip over that obviously this week. But
how many has he made? Do you have that up?
Arby's, I don't know, but the one move he did make this week was picking up that Jaleel McLaughlin.
McLaughlin, oh, for Denver.
There you go.
He's
You're
made
so bad.
13. He's made 13. So he's on closer to my end of the spectrum than Ryan's for
But
sure.
it's an interesting play because I think he put some decent coin on him. If I'm not mistaken this week. I
He
think he put like
put
20 something on him.
34,
There you go. Never
which
mind.
is
Even higher than I
interesting
thought.
because he put 34 and he outbid Nils by 3. Like
Yeah.
I remember I was looking at that today and I was like 34. The next closest is probably like 15, but I was like 31 and then 16 for the
So
Bandits.
I
So
guess I mean, I guess more to come for his, if he's not going to play Warren, he does have options. He has Zach Moss. If Taylor sits, I think that's probably the consensus. Hey, slide him in. He's going to get the volume. Tough matchup, but still no one behind him.
mhm.
But he does have that option now. If Javonte Williams sits, I mean, again, not
Yeah,
necessarily thinking he's going to produce the same that he did last week against Chicago, but I mean,
yeah,
playing
that's a good
against the
point.
Jets, tougher matchup for sure. But again,
Yeah.
he might be the guy there. Besides, he looked like the guy I should say behind Williams, even with P Ryan there. So
Yeah,
we'll
and
see.
P Ryan, he doesn't look. I liked P Ryan coming into this year. Like he was a draft target for me. When Nils picked him, I thought it was actually a really really good pick. And he hasn't looked really good this year at all. But yeah, that's a good call on McLaughlin.
Yeah, it's cool that
McLaughlin, however the fuck you say it.
I don't even know. So you've been better at. I mean, you knew Achan's name better than I did last week.
H
So we're gonna
Chan, yeah.
yeah we're gonna
So
keep.
we're splitting on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one down. So I'm 2-4. You're 3-3 from last week in terms of the
Okay,
matchups we picked. So we'll keep track of it.
got
We'll
it.
keep it running. We'll
Cool.
see how
We'll
we
have
do.
graphic. Yeah, we'll have graphics next week. We'll put it up. We'll have something to put up
Yeah, we're just
next week.
scratching the surface. But all right, let's
Yeah,
get
we're
into
good.
power rankings.
Let's
Let's
get into the
wrap up
power
our.
rankings and let's wrap up. Yeah, let's get out of here. So
Go ahead.
yo,
I'll let you start this week.
okay.
Want me to go?
I got it. Yeah, you go because I don't have
All right, perfect. All right.
it.
Well, it's easy to start with one. Go 1 through 12 here again.
Do we have the same first two? Let's just say that.
Who's
I
your
know
number two?
we have the same one. I have RB or I have Rick at 2.
Yes, so we have the same two. Yeah,
Okay.
Tiburon and Rick. I mean, hard to argue, against either one of those two teams. I gave a slight edge to Tiburon,
Yep.
strictly just speaking, with what his point total was. Again, I think they're the two hottest teams in the league. I mean, obviously with them being 1 and 2, and I mean Rick's got 3 wins in a row.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's in terms of a steadiness, they've had the most consistency in terms of rosters. Not many glaring holes when you look at their team from top to bottom. So yeah, I think 1 and 2 is pretty consensus for us right now, at least as it stands. I think this is when we're going to get kind of into the
Yeah.
mix and match a little bit because at 3, I got a young man that's thinking Arby's. Um, I slid him up to the 3 hole. I just think coming off a huge point total week. Um, I think he's leading the league in points. I believe. Yeah, 522. Yep.
Arby's. Yeah.
So yep. I just his team's hot. Again, I think we kind of touched on it more so last week when we are going through everyone's rosters a little bit more in depth. That we were a little surprised at where Arby's was sitting, even at 2 at the time was 1 and 2. So he gets back to 500. I think he's kind of trending up a little bit. And again, he's top heavy, but he's top heavy meaning he's got four or five guys, and then we're not even talking about Sam Laporta, some other guys that are really consistent for him. So
Yeah.
I have Arby's at my three hole. Uh, Four, I'm gonna go with the plantation. I just think he's been trending or treading water, I should say. Um, you know, Essentially the whole season, and now the big question mark is finally here for him. Is Taylor going to play? Is Taylor going to get traded? And this is a big call out for him, I think, coming into the week 5 matchup here, and playing against Arby's too. So yeah, I got him at the 4 spot. Five, I this was a tough one for me to kind of figure out from 5, 6, and 7. These teams are kind of interchangeable, I think, for me on a given week based on matchups. But at 5, I put Riggs. So I got Steve at 5. Might have gave him a slight edge just based on his 3-1 record. Again, Eckler's the big question mark for him, or I should say the big hole for him for the first couple weeks here. Should be getting him, I would assume, after the bye. So I got Steve sitting at 5 here. Again, we kind of make fun of the points against. I mean, he's 354 points against. I mean, easily the least amount of points scored against him. But and 422 is nothing really that exciting in terms of points for. But again, missing your first round pick, we'll kind of see where he looks going next week. So I got him at 5. 6 and 7, I kind of kept where the standings were. I gave Anthony a slight edge over the Bastards, so I put Finkel at 6, Bastards at 7.
Okay.
Think they're interchangeable, but I do think that Anthony has a little bit more firepower from top to bottom. I mean, we kind of noted the whole quarterback carousel that he's going to have to play on a week to week
Yeah.
basis right now, unless he makes a move.
Yeah, that's
But
his Achilles heel.
yeah, so I do think that's going to be the issue for him. And then the Bastards are probably going to get Barkley back either this week or next.
Yeah.
We'll kind of see where he's got a couple buys, which a couple buys early doesn't hurt necessarily. I mean, you kind of know, hey, I got my quarterback out of the way, I got my wide receiver 1 out of the way, and kind of see where you kind of go from there. So I got those guys kind of sitting where they're at. Going down, I guess 8, I got the Bandits. So he really fell from the 2 hole. I think we had him last week, but again, don't think it's a bad team by any means. Kind of a dud week, like we mentioned. I think he has a really, really good squad in terms of how solid it is from top to bottom again. So I got him just based on kind of where he fell in terms of the top 7 guys to that 8 hole. Those guys were kind of interchangeable though. 9, I'm going to go with Colombian White. Again, slight edge over the guys that are sitting underneath him at 1 and 3, 1 and 3, and 0 and 4. Gave him just a slight edge, essentially, just on record a little bit. And he has some heavy hitters. I mean, he has Travis Kelce, Adams. I mean, those guys. His running backs have been really consistent. Again, he has Kenneth Walker on bye this week, so we'll see what happens in terms of that second RB spot that we just talked about. But I got him just ahead of the final 3 guys here. I gave a slight edge in terms of the roster to you over the bottom 3 guys. Even though you're sitting at 0 and 4, you have 456 points for, which are a substantial amount more points than me and Beeve have. 5-10 against, that's tough. You got the second most points against, besides Finkel. So I got you at the 10 hole. I got myself at the 11. Getting on the board, getting cut back, hopefully getting right a little bit here, moving forward with some of the guys starting to produce like Jacobs and stuff like that. Again, big question mark still with Cincinnati. So that's going to, unfortunately, another thing for me to worry about, even though I get cut back, hopefully this week or next. So we'll see. And again, hopefully it's the cup that we imagine him to be. And then at 12, again, it could have been either me or Beeve. I gave a slight edge to myself. I think I got Beeve at 12. Kind of just looking to see what happens with his running back core. He did trade a receiver with Olave in that deal. I think it was last week or the week prior. But I don't think the return necessarily was there to kind of solidify that running back spot with Stevenson. So we'll see. I mean, he does have a lot of depth still that he could trade away for running back depth and make moves and stuff like that. And he still has
Yep.
some really, really good weapons. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I rounded out the top 12.
Yeah, so we're in lockstep with the first three. I have Ryan, Rick, and Ben as the
Arby's.
top
Yeah.
three teams. I think they're to me, they're a pretty top tier. And then there's like a sub tier to my 4 and 5, and then I have a
Yep.
group. But yeah, we have the similar top three, or the same top three, I should say. I think for me, Ryan's been clearing away the best team so far. 4, I actually have Anthony.
Oh,
I was looking at Anthony's roster, and yes, I know he's playing quarterback roulette, but I mean,
Steve.
his team is solid. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's got the number one player. He's got
Sure.
ETN, who I view as a top 10 back moving forward. I know Goddard's been pretty awful, or at least I shouldn't say he's been awful. He hasn't been what he was drafted to be.
He's been a
Let's say
tight end.
that. He's been a tight end. He's been steady. I'll say that.
Yep.
I think Brees, the healthier he gets, is gonna really lock up that flex spot, and then he can kind of have just Keenan as his wide receiver one, and DJ Moore and Mike Evans kind of filling in there. And he's got really good bench depth. And Judy Myers, I think he has some trade chips there to maybe upgrade his
Feeling.
team. So I like Anthony's roster a lot.
Like
Um,
it.
5, I have Andy.
Yep.
Um, it's hard for me. I know we talked about the holes that he kind of has and some question marks. It's really hard for me to get past a trio of Hertz, Hill, Kyron, and now with A Chain kind of coming in.
Yep.
Would it surprise you if at year's end A Chain's like a top 5 running back?
No, I mean those are again, these are what makes these championship teams in fantasy. I mean, you get the guys that are going to be able to win you games, the
Yep.
consistent guys that everybody kind of knows. You get Tyreek Hill, obviously. You took Hurts, kind of in that 1-2 spot. Um, and then yeah, to your point, I mean, around 10 pick, around 14 pick now are hitting for him. Does that help him kind of stay afloat, which it has, to 3-1, and now he gets a Jonathan Taylor. Who knows? We don't even. That's a huge question mark. But man, if
Yeah.
that hits, I mean, he's got a really, really strong team. So yeah, to your point,
Yep.
I do think I wouldn't be surprised at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if Williams ends up being like the top back from the
Yeah,
Rams.
that's true also.
He's got the
Yeah.
most. He has more shares in their offense than CMC does in San Francisco. He has the most shares as a running back.
It's crazy. That's so crazy.
It's
It's so funny too because his profile's like he's like not that big. Like
not.
he's
It just came out of nowhere this year. It's
yeah.
one of those things that just hit. After that Cam Akers, they kind of knew what they had and got rid of him, and he's getting every run in that offense. I mean, in
He's
terms of being out there,
he's 5'9", 194.
incredible.
What a story. Good for Kyron. All right. 6. This is where I have Steve.
Shuffle. Yep. Okay.
I can't put a team that's 3-1 in the
That's high,
bottom half of
probably.
the league.
Yeah, that's high.
I do actually think I know I rag on Steve's team for being lucky and with his points against. And I know I just went on a rant about why Jahmyr Gibbs was maybe not a great pick in the 3rd round, but I do think he has. I think Christian Watson getting healthy, he's got a pretty good outlook there moving forward. Devontae Smith is a baller. He's still got Raheem. I mean, I know we talk about Achane a lot, but Raheem can break off long runs. Jake Ferguson has been a top. I think he's the 2nd ranked tight end right now.
He's up there.
In
Yeah, it sucks
I
because I had him. But also he drafted me,
bummer.
so I can't really say. Well, I mean,
Sure.
he drafted him. I
Yeah.
picked him up. Then I dropped him.
Yeah.
And now he's
Yep.
just a target. He's like the probably one of the more consistent guys, I should say, in that Dallas offense, at least in
Yeah.
the passing game, besides CD.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and then getting Eckler and Lockett back from their bye. Hopefully Eckler comes out and healthy. I think that changes everything for his team. And then kind of moving forward once I think hopefully he can start to be more confident with Fields, but or just play CJ Stroud kind of moving forward.
Yep.
But yeah, I think this is kind of where the slide stops for me with Steve's team. 7, I have Aaron. I think I like Aaron, and this was close. I went back and forth with, so I
Yeah,
have
these are all
I
tough.
have
Yeah.
Aaron 7, I have Logue 8.
Yeah.
So I kind of went back and forth. I like Aaron's play. I look at Aaron's roster and I'm like, how are you 2-2?
Yeah,
Like,
I agree.
and
I was
I know
shocked to
like,
beat him.
yeah, and well, my thing is, I'm just like, I know that was a dud week, but I'm like, I think Aaron's got a really solid roster top to bottom.
Mm,
And going back to Logue, I know he's dealing with the Saquon injury. Now he's got Herbert on a bye. He's lost
hmm
2 straight. I think it's been challenging. And
Yeah.
starting 2 Jags, I do think that I thought Jacksonville's offense was going to be awesome. If they're like league average, your ceiling for those two
Sure.
guys is kind of capped because they both operate sort of in the same area of the field too. So,
Yep.
um,
I like it.
I still think Logue's got a pretty solid team, especially with Herbert. I know we kind of ragged on him about that pick because I thought it was pretty early, but he's the number one quarterback so far.
Yeah, I
So
thought it was a homer pick, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he certainly fit the bill.
yeah. 10, we have the same bottom four also. So
Okay.
I have Phil at 9.
Yep.
Um, I have myself at 10, and then I have you at 11 and Beeve at 12.
Yep.
I think I pretty much, you kind of said it all about those bottom teams. Phil's team just feels kind of like they're just drifting maybe a little bit. Um, Kind of just like right in the middle in terms of their like
Yeah,
their
I
point
agree with you.
totals, their record. Like
Yep.
he's 2-2. I like I
He's
said,
great.
I think I don't want to be over. I'm not trying to be overconfident. If you do that in fantasy, you're going to be a dumbass. But I'm confident in the team that I put together, and it's this
We're
team
looking at roster.
that I
Yeah, sure.
drafted. Um, your outlook, I know you won one, so you're on a win streak. It's hard because of the injury to Burrow. Who knows what's going to happen? But
Yeah.
I think your best players are better than Nils's best players. And I think that ultimately is the deciding factor for me,
Mhm.
especially with Josh Jacobs getting a really, really good matchup against Green Bay this
You're
week.
bad. Yeah,
So that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of in lockstep. I think we kind of got a good vibe of and a good gauge of the league hierarchy as it stands right now.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah, no, I think I mean, barring, obviously injuries and trades and stuff like that. I mean, just kind of looking at where everyone kind of shakes out. I mean, to your point, I think it was a clear, I would say two. I mean, I think we were pretty concise on Tiburon and Chip Blizzard, Rick and Ryan being at the top.
yep,
Um, RBs, Dre and Finkel, they were all kind of mixed up in there. And then I guess you throw in Steve too because of the record. But so I think that was like the next probably tier down below it. And then after
yep,
that, I think that whole wave of 2-2 guys, and then the bottom three obviously being
yep.
kind of set. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the next couple weeks are really going to be make or break for especially the bottom guys. You, me, Beef. I mean, those we have to get wins, or
We're
it's
done.
really a 9 horse race for 6 spots. You know what I mean? So
Or I'm trading for draft picks. I'm just kidding. We outlaw that.
thank God we have all that. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, I think we're in agreement there. Most of our picks have been kind of the same in terms of matchups. Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see where everything, now with bye weeks starting to come into to play as well. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
we'll see
Yep.
where those deep, the depth lies within the good teams that drafted well, and have some of those depth, deeper pieces to kind of plug and play. We're not talking injuries, we're talking just bye weeks now. So
Yep.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where everything kind of shakes loose in the next couple of weeks. Moving forward from now, which I think this is the first bye week. I'm assuming, right? Week 5. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so it'll be moving forward. Um, we'll kind of see where needs are, and I think this is kind of usually where we kind of generate some of the trades and stuff like that.
Yep.
I think everyone likes for the most part to kind of sit and kind of wait and see with their team and hey, I'm 2-2, or I'm 1-3, or in some cases for your being 0-4 but still having a good roster. then it's like, okay, either I hit panic mode or I try to fill in to try to make a run at this thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
it'll be interesting kind of see where everyone gets to in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, agreed. And Phil, if you're listening to this, my God, make a trade for a running back. Don't start AJ Dillon.
Please don't start AJ Dillon. I'm a Packer
Okay.
fan. Please
Yeah,
don't
what
start
are you
AJ
doing?
Dillon.
It looks like it runs
But
He's slower than Najee Harris. All right.
and the fact that you
Let's
just picked him up and plugged him in your lineup. I mean, come on
yeah, make a trade. Hit up Nils. All right.
now.
Let's we're at, I think we cleared 2 hours today.
Is it two?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I
we're
don't even know what
going the
time it was.
opposite way of what we planned. But no, this is good. We crammed a lot of good stuff in here. I know we're gonna keep kind of keeping it concise. I think as we kind of roll through
I'm
each
hoping an
week,
hour. I think an hour would be the
yeah,
realistic
I think that's good. I
goal.
know
But
we'll do the runaway train. We'll do that after every one of my matchups. I feel like it just flows easier.
yeah, I
And
like
then
that. I like that.
yeah, and then we can just hit on the matchups, go through the players quickly. But this is second week. I mean, like I said, we're going into week 5. It's moving week, starting to get real. So a
See what
third of
happens.
the season is almost over. So yeah, I hope everyone, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. This is awesome that we get to hop on here. G.
Yeah, I think next week we're gonna try to play around with some platforms this week and
Yep.
see if there's anything you want to move to. Try to obviously expand on this a little bit, not in terms of time, but just to kind of make it a little bit better. I think we're gonna start bringing some people on.
Yep.
I know we're gonna put some feelers out, see if we can get the schedules working out for guys on
Yeah.
Wednesday nights. I think this has been a good night. And try to bring in a guy, a manager here and there. But definitely, I think next week will be the first week we hopefully have a guest. So
Cool. Yeah. Hell yeah. So again, week 2. Thank you everyone for tuning in who listens. This is awesome. I know we both love doing this. So
love it, absolutely love
love
it.
this league, and I am glad that we have an official podcast. So G, awesome shit tonight, man. Thank you
Anytime with
for
you, buddy.
hopping on. Hope everyone has a great rest of your night. But for G Money, Green Ball Packer, I am Pain Train. Hopefully everyone has a good night. Peace out.
See you, buddy.